42 elite alien warriors entered a survival trial with weapons designed to destroy cities. Only one participant understood the trial was never about fighting, and that mistake cost everyone else. Look, I have been an observer at the Galactic Military Academy for 16 cycles now, and I have seen some truly spectacular failures. I have watched cadets from 73 different species try, and often fail to complete the 7-day trial. The Crimson Wastes do not care about your family lineage, your combat scores, or how many push-ups you can do in zero gravity. The Wastes care about one thing, and one thing only: can you survive? The survival trial is not some gentle camping trip where you roast protein cubes over a fire and sing songs about your homeworld. No, no, no. This is the final test before graduation, the ultimate qualifier that separates the actual soldiers from the ones who just look good in a uniform. 7 days, 168 hours, in a desert that regularly hits 50 degrees Celsius during the day and drops to freezing at night, with predators, with sandstorms, with exactly zero sympathy from the universe. The statistics are, let us say, not encouraging. 40% of cadets require medical evacuation before day 4. 20% more quit voluntarily, usually while weeping or vomiting. Sometimes both simultaneously. The remaining 40% actually finish, though many of them finish on stretchers, babbling incoherently about sand demons and heat mirages that may or may not have been real. This year we had 42 cadets registered for the trial. 42 of the most aggressive, most trained, most decorated military candidates the galaxy had to offer. Warriors from species that had conquered entire star systems, tacticians who had won simulated battles against impossible odds, survivors who had already passed 24 brutal qualification tests just to get here. Every single one of them arrived at the drop zone with enough weaponry to start a small war. Plasma blades, energy rifles, sonic disruptors, molecular nets, shock batons, you name it, they came prepared to fight, to dominate, to prove that they were the apex predator in this miserable stretch of red dirt and broken rocks. And then there was the human. Let me introduce you to the favorites, the ones everyone expected to dominate this trial. First we had Terra, a Saurian from the Kepler Reach, 7 feet of scaled muscle, with reflexes that could snatch a plasma bolt out of the air. Well, theoretically, I have never actually seen anyone do that, but Terra certainly talked like he could. He carried twin plasma blades that could cut through reinforced steel, and his strategy was beautifully simple: kill everything that moves, establish dominance, become the apex predator. Subtle as a meteor strike, but effective in its own way. Then there was Vorn, an Arthurian whose species had been waging successful tactical campaigns since before humans discovered fire. 6 legs, compound eyes that could see in 17 different spectrums, and a brain that processed strategic scenarios faster than most computers. He brought energy spears, collapsible shields, and enough tactical gear to outfit a small platoon. His plan involved securing high ground, rationing supplies with mathematical precision, and outlasting everyone through superior planning. On paper, it was flawless. Kisara represented the crystalline collective, and she was possibly the most terrifying cadet in the group. Her species could survive in vacuum, withstand radiation that would liquefy most organic life, and regenerate from injuries that would kill anything else. She carried sonic disruptors that could shatter bone and rupture organs from 30 meters away. Her strategy was endurance through sheer biological superiority. Why worry about the environment when your body was essentially a living weapon system? The others were equally impressive. Dronak, obsidian brute with armor plating and concussion hammers. Sela, a winged scout with aerial advantage and precision rifles. Korvax, a mist shade who could become nearly invisible and carried enough toxins to poison a water treatment facility. Every single one of them was a walking arsenal, a graduate-level thesis on how to survive through violence and superior firepower. And then, as I mentioned, there was the human. Lieutenant Jennifer Reeves stood 5 feet and 6 inches tall. She weighed maybe 60 kilograms soaking wet. She had brown hair tied back in a practical knot, brown eyes that looked perpetually tired, and the kind of unremarkable face that you would forget 5 minutes after meeting her. When the equipment inspectors checked her loadout, they actually laughed. No plasma weapons. No energy shields, no molecular nets or shock batons or anything that could reasonably be called a weapon. She had a survival pack, a water filtration system, a solar blanket, nutrition bars that looked like compressed sadness, a basic first aid kit, a hat, an actual physical hat made of fabric. The other cadets looked at her like she had arrived naked. Vexrala made a joke about humans bringing a picnic to a war. Juan calculated her survival odds at approximately 4%. Vexrala did not even acknowledge her existence. Jennifer just smiled, adjusted her pack, and checked her canteen. We should have paid more attention to that canteen. The dropships deposited all 42 cadets at dawn, spreading them across a 20-kilometer zone in the Crimson Wastes. The temperature was already climbing toward 40 degrees Celsius, and the red sand stretched endlessly in every direction, broken only by rock formations that looked like the planet's skeletal remains. And oh, did those cadets hit the ground running. Vexral burst from his drop pod like he was personally offended by the desert's existence. Within the first hour he had tracked down one of the local predators, a sand viper about 3 meters long with fangs that dripped paralytic venom. Did he avoid it? Did he go around it? Of course not. He killed it with his plasma blades, roared his victory to the empty sky, and proceeded to drag the corpse back to his camp as a trophy. Because nothing says tactical survival like wasting energy on a dominance display that literally no one except our monitoring satellites could see. By midday he had killed 2 more vipers and something called a ridge stalker, which was essentially a 6-legged nightmare, with too many teeth. He was establishing his territory, making it clear that he was the biggest threat in his sector. His scales gleamed with sweat, and his breathing was already labored, but he looked absolutely thrilled with himself. Vorn, meanwhile, executed his strategy with characteristic precision. He immediately headed for the highest rock formation in his zone, a jagged spire that rose about 40 meters above the desert floor. The climb took him 3 hours in the blazing heat, but he made it. He set up his tactical position with his shields and spears arranged in defensive configurations, his scanning equipment monitoring everything within a 5-kilometer radius. From up there he could see everything. Absolutely everything. Except, water. There was no water up there, but I am sure he had calculated for that. Probably. Kasara did something equally predictable. She marched straight into the deepest, hottest part of her sector, found a cluster of thermal vents that would bake most species alive and set up camp right there. She used her sonic disruptors to collapse some rocks into a defensive perimeter, creating a fortress that broadcast a simple message: stay away or get shattered. Her crystalline body actually seemed to glow brighter in the heat, absorbing the thermal energy. She looked utterly in her element, which I suppose she was. The other cadets followed similar patterns. Drunek smashed his way through obstacles, creating a path of destruction. Sela took to the air, scouting and establishing aerial supremacy. Korvax disappeared into the shadows between rocks, becoming a ghost. Everyone was fighting, claiming, dominating, proving themselves against the environment and each other. And Jennifer? Jennifer walked. Just walked. Not running, not charging, not making any dramatic statements to the universe. She walked at a steady, boring, absolutely pedestrian pace toward a shallow canyon about 2 kilometers from her drop point. She found a small seep spring, the kind that barely qualified as water, more like damp sand that occasionally admitted to being liquid. She tested it with her filtration system, filled her canteen and drank slowly. Then she found an overhang, a pathetic little cave that barely provided shade, and she set up her solar blanket to create more shade. She ate 1 nutrition bar. She sat down, and she waited. I remember thinking, this is going to be the shortest trial participation in Academy history. The human would be begging for extraction by sunset. Spoiler alert. I was wrong. Day 2 arrived with all the mercy of a plasma burn to the face. The temperature spiked to 52 degrees Celsius by noon, and the Crimson Waste decided to remind everyone why they had that lovely name. A sandstorm rolled through the northern sectors, turning the air into a horizontal cheese grater that stripped paint off our monitoring drones. Axrel woke up sore. Now, for a Saurian warrior who had spent his entire life training for combat, sore was not supposed to be part of the vocabulary. But killing 4 large predators in extreme heat while wearing armor and carrying plasma blades tends to have consequences. His muscles ached, his scales were dulled from dehydration, and the lovely trophy carcass he had dragged to his camp, it was rotting, rapidly, attracting scavengers. So naturally he had to defend his territory from the scavengers. More fighting, more energy expenditure, more sweating out precious fluids that his body desperately needed to keep his internal organs from shutting down. By the end of day 2, his water supplies were 60% depleted, and he had a gash on his left arm from a scavenger's claw that was definitely going to get infected if he did not treat it soon. But treating it would mean admitting weakness, and Texeral did not admit weakness. Obviously, Vorn's tactical genius was running into a small problem. Well, a large problem. A very large, very obvious problem that somehow his strategic calculations had underestimated. His fortress on top of that rock spire, it was fantastic for visibility and defense, but water is heavy. The water he had carried up during his climb was running out faster than anticipated because apparently, sitting in direct sunlight at 40 meters elevation in a desert makes you thirsty. Who knew? He had 2 choices: stay up there and ration himself into dehydration, or climb down, refill his supplies and climb back up, wasting enormous amounts of energy in the process. His compound eyes tracked the distant shimmer that might have been water sources, calculating trajectories and energy costs. The math was not looking friendly. By day 3 he was rationing his water to sips that would make a monk look indulgent. His mandibles clicked with stress. Kisara was doing better than most, but even crystalline superiority has limits. The thermal vents she had camped near were magnificent for energy absorption during the day, but at night, the temperature plummeted. Turns out, when your entire survival strategy is based on thermal regulation, rapid temperature swings are not ideal. She started developing micro-fractures, tiny stress cracks in her structure from the constant expansion and contraction. Nothing fatal, not yet, but definitely not part of the plan. Across the wastes, the same pattern repeated. Grenak had smashed through so many obstacles that his armor plating was damaged, exposing vulnerable tissue to the sun. Sela had used so much energy flying in the thin, hot air that her wing muscles were cramping. Korvax had hidden so effectively that he forgot to mark his water caches and now could not find 2 of them. By day 3, we had already evacuated 6 cadets for medical emergencies and another 4 had voluntarily quit, transmitted their surrender codes, and begged for extraction. And the human, Jennifer, woke up each morning in her pathetic little cave. She drank water. She ate a nutrition bar. She spent the hottest part of the day sitting in the shade, doing absolutely nothing interesting. When the temperature dropped in the evening, she walked, slowly, carefully. She checked her surroundings. She refilled her canteen from the seep spring. She ate another nutrition bar. Then she went back to her shelter and slept. That was it. That was her entire strategy. Drink water, find shade, rest, repeat. No fighting, no tactical maneuvers, no dramatic gestures. She was running the most boring survival trial in Academy history, and somehow, infuriatingly, she looked fine. Tired, yes. Sunburned, definitely. But fine. Her water supplies, completely stable. Her energy levels, conserved. Her injuries, none. I was starting to feel personally offended by how mundane this was. Day 4 was when everything fell apart. Spectacularly. Thexeral's infected wound had progressed from probably should treat that to definitely should have treated that 3 days ago. The gash on his arm was swollen, oozing something that definitely was not supposed to ooze, and his scales around the wound had turned a sickly gray color. His fever spiked to dangerous levels. The mighty Saurian warrior, who had killed every predator foolish enough to enter his territory, was being taken down by bacteria approximately 1/1,000,000th his size. He lasted until noon on day 4 before his pride finally broke. He activated his emergency beacon, his clawed hand shaking as he pressed the button. The extraction team found him delirious, mumbling about sand demons and how he had totally won the fight against the Ridgestalker. His plasma blades lay unused beside him. All that firepower, all that killing capacity, completely irrelevant against an enemy too small to stab. The medic said if he had waited another 6 hours he would have lost the arm, possibly his life. But sure, establishing dominance was definitely worth it. Bourne's mathematical precision failed him on day 4 as well. He had rationed his water down to the molecular level, calculating exactly how much he needed to survive versus how much energy it would cost to climb down and back up. The problem with calculations is they work great until your body stops caring about math and starts shutting down instead. He made it to day 5 before collapsing. just fell over on his tactical spire, his 6 legs giving out simultaneously. His compound eyes stopped focusing. His mandibles stopped clicking. The extraction team had to send a specialized hover unit to get him down because he was too dehydrated to even grip the rappel line. They found his energy spears arranged in perfect defensive positions, his shields still active, his tactical equipment still monitoring everything. None of it mattered. He had won the high ground and lost the war. His body was so dehydrated that the medics had to put him in a fluid immersion tank for 18 hours. The doctors said his internal organs had started crystallizing. That is what happens when a brilliant tactical mind forgets that biology does not negotiate. Kisara made it to the evening of day 5 before her crystalline structure finally betrayed her. The micro-fractures from the thermal stress had been spreading, tiny cracks spiderwebbing through her body. She had ignored them, trusting in her species' legendary durability and regeneration. That trust was misplaced. During the temperature drop on the 5th night, which plunged from 48 degrees to near freezing in under 3 hours, her structure could not handle the stress anymore. She did not shatter dramatically. It was worse. She just started cracking, slowly, pieces of her literally falling off. A finger here, a chunk of her shoulder there. Her sonic disruptors lay on the ground, fully charged and completely useless against an enemy that was just physics and chemistry doing their thing. She transmitted her emergency code at 0300 hours, her voice distorted through her damaged vocal structure. The extraction team said she was crying, which was remarkable because no one had ever documented a crystalline collective member crying before. Apparently, even living weapon systems have breaking points. By the end of day 5, 31 cadets were out. 31. Some evacuated for medical emergencies. Some quit voluntarily. Some were pulled out by instructors who decided that watching a cadet die for a training exercise was poor publicity. The favorites had fallen. The warriors had been defeated. The tactical geniuses had been outsmarted by a desert that did not care about their strategy. Drunak's armor had failed, and the sun had given him burns that would scar for life. Sela had torn both wing muscles and could not fly anymore. Korvax had become so disoriented from dehydration that he had walked in circles for 6 hours before collapsing. The weapons, the tech, the biological superiority, none of it had mattered. And Jennifer? She woke up on day 5, drank water, ate a nutrition bar, sat in her shade during the hot hours, walked in the evening, refilled her canteen, ate another nutrition bar, checked her supplies, rested. Her pack was lighter now, sure. Her nutrition bars were running low. She had a sunburn that looked painful. Her lips were chapped. She moved slower, more carefully, but she was functional, coherent, hydrated. While warriors with plasma blades were being evacuated on stretchers, the human with a hat and a canteen was still walking. I stopped finding it boring around day 4. By day 5, I was starting to suspect we had completely misunderstood what strength actually meant. Day 6 began with only 3 cadets remaining in the Crimson Wastes. 3 out of 42 of the most elite military candidates in the galaxy. The oddsmakers had not even bothered calculating scenarios this unlikely. The 2 non-human survivors were Quelix, a thermal adapted from the Scorch Worlds, and Rintha, an aquatic breather who had modified breathing apparatus and ridiculous endurance stats. Both of them had survived through sheer biological advantage, and it must be said, generous amounts of stubbornness. They had watched the favorites fall. They had seen the mighty humbled. And now, with victory within reach, they both made the same critical mistake. They got ambitious. Quelix decided that simply surviving was not enough. No, he needed to prove he had dominated the trial. So, on day 6, with maybe 30 hours left before extraction, he decided to summit the highest peak in his sector, a completely unnecessary climb that would accomplish nothing except bragging rights. His thermal-adapted biology meant the heat did not bother him, which apparently made him forget that climbing a mountain still requires energy, water, and functioning muscles. He made it halfway up before his leg cramped. Not a gentle cramp. A full muscle seizure that locked his entire leg rigid. He clung to the rock face, unable to move up or down. His water supply 200 meters below in his abandoned camp. He hung there for 4 hours, his fingers slowly losing grip before he finally activated his emergency beacon. The extraction team found him whimpering. The thermal adapted who had mocked Jennifer's cautious approach was crying like a cadet on his first day. They had to airlift him off the mountain. His fingernails had torn off from gripping the rocks. All for a summit that meant absolutely nothing. Rintha's failure was somehow even more ridiculous. She had been doing well, conserving energy, staying near water sources, playing it smart. But on day 6, she encountered another cadets' abandoned camp. Inside, she found weapons, beautiful, powerful, unused weapons that some failed cadet had left behind, and she could not resist. She spent 6 hours, 6 precious hours, attempting to master an energy rifle she had never trained with. Why? Because she wanted to finish the trial looking like a warrior, not a survivor. She wanted the glory shot, the dramatic finish. She burned through her remaining energy reserves, playing with a weapon she did not need, in heat that was actively trying to kill her, with less than a day remaining. By evening she collapsed from heat exhaustion. Just fell over, her modified breathing apparatus wheezing. She never even fired the rifle. The extraction team found her unconscious, the weapon lying beside her fully charged and completely pointless. And then there was one. Jennifer walked through day 6 like she had walked through every other day. Water, nutrition bar, shade, rest, walk, refill, eat, sleep. The monitoring instructors were gathered around the screens now, all of them watching this unremarkable human do unremarkable things in the most remarkable way possible. Commander Zara, a veteran observer who had supervised 60 trials, kept replaying Jennifer's footage. "She has not done anything impressive," he muttered. "Not one single impressive thing." "Exactly," replied Instructor Vez, her tentacles twitching with something that might have been admiration. "She has not done anything stupid either. Not once. Do you understand how difficult that is?" We watched Jennifer check her canteen for the 100th time. We watched her adjust her hat. We watched her find a shaded spot and simply sit there, breathing steadily, her eyes half closed. She looked exhausted. She looked sunburned. She looked like she had been through exactly what she had been through, but she was still there, still functional, still coherent, still moving forward. "The human is going to win," Zara said quietly. "With a hat and a water filter, she is going to beat 41 cadets who brought enough firepower to level a city." Nobody argued with him. Day 7, the final day. 168 hours reduced to their last few moments. Jennifer woke up in her shelter at dawn, same as every other morning. She drank water, she ate her second-to-last nutrition bar, chewing slowly, methodically. She packed her gear with the same careful attention she had shown every single day. Nothing rushed, nothing frantic, just the steady, boring process of someone who had done this exact routine 6 times already and saw no reason to change it now. The extraction point was 8 kilometers away. She had mapped the route 3 days ago, noting shade sources and the one water seep along the path. She began walking at 0700 hours, maintaining her steady, unremarkable pace. Not fast, not slow, just sustainable. The monitoring team watched every step. We had multiple satellites tracking her, medical sensors monitoring her vital signs, drones recording from 6 different angles. The most watched cadet in Academy history, and she was just walking, 1 foot in front of the other, breathing, sweating, continuing. She stopped twice. Once to drink water and rest in the shadow of a rock formation. Once to refill her canteen at the seep spring she had marked. Both stops were brief, efficient. She checked her navigation unit, confirmed her heading, and kept moving. At 1430 hours she crested the final ridge and saw the extraction point below. A flat zone marked with beacon pylons, shimmering in the heat. She paused for maybe 10 seconds, looking at it. Then she walked down the slope, her boots crunching on red sand and broken rock. She reached the extraction zone at 1507 hours, 53 hours before the deadline. She stepped across the boundary line, set down her pack, and sat down hard on the ground. Her shoulders slumped, her head dropped forward. For the first time in 7 days, she stopped moving with purpose and just collapsed into exhausted relief. The extraction shuttle arrived 12 minutes later. Commander Zara himself was aboard, along with a full medical team expecting to scrape another broken cadet off the desert floor. They found Jennifer sitting cross-legged, drinking the last of her water, her hat pulled low against the sun. "Lieutenant Reeves," Zara said, his translation device making his voice sound formal and slightly confused. "How are you feeling?" "Tired, sir," she replied. Her voice was hoarse from 7 days of dry air, but steady, thirsty, ready for a real meal. "But I am good." The medical team scanned her. Dehydrated. Yes, but within acceptable parameters. Sunburned. Definitely. Minor muscle fatigue. Chapped lips. Some blisters on her feet. All things considered, she was in better condition than cadets who had quit on day 2. They loaded her onto the shuttle. As it lifted off, Jara pulled up the comparison files. Images of the other cadets at extraction. Thixral delirious with fever. Vorn's crystallized organs. Kasrara literally falling apart. Quelix with torn fingernails. Rintha unconscious. The warriors, the tacticians, the biologically superior specimens, all of them wrecked. And then Jennifer's scan, tired, worn, but whole. She never fought anything, Jara said, more to himself than anyone else. Not one predator, not one challenge. She just survived. Yes, sir, the medic replied. Turns out that is what a survival trial is supposed to test. The shuttle climbed higher, leaving the crimson wastes behind. In her seat, Jennifer had already fallen asleep, her hat clutched in her hands. She had won. So, let me tell you what we learned from the Great Humiliation, as it became known among the Academy cadets, or as the humans call it with their typical understated nature, the 7-day trial. Class of 41 cadets brought weapons designed to kill, maim, and destroy. They brought plasma blades that could slice through steel, energy spears that could punch through armor, sonic disruptors that could shatter bones. They brought the tools of war to a survival trial, because in their minds, and let me be honest, in our minds too, survival meant conquest. Survival meant domination. Survival meant proving you were the biggest, baddest, most dangerous thing in the area. Jennifer Reeves brought a hat, and she won. The irony is so thick you could cut it with one of Thexeral's plasma blades, assuming he had not dropped them while being evacuated for his infected wound. Everyone prepared for war. The human prepared for a camping trip. Everyone else asked, "What can I kill?" She asked, "Where is the water?" Everyone else wanted to prove they were strong. She just wanted to not die. Turns out, in a survival situation, not dying is actually the whole point. Shocking, I know. After the trial, the Academy held a mandatory debrief for all surviving cadets. Well, surviving is a generous term. Most of them were still in medical recovery. They attended via hologram, looking various degrees of humiliated. Jennifer showed up in person, wearing a clean uniform, still slightly sunburned, eating what appeared to be her first decent meal in a week. Commander Zara made them watch the full footage. All 7 days. Every boring, unglamorous moment of Jennifer's trial, the cadets watched her walk, drink water, rest, walk some more, drink more water, rest again. There were no dramatic fight sequences, no tactical brilliance, no moments of glory, just patience, consistency, and a stubborn refusal to do anything stupid. Humans have a saying, Zara told the assembled cadets, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had learned an uncomfortable lesson. Slow and steady wins the race. We dismissed this as primitive philosophy. We assumed it was the motto of a species too weak for direct confrontation. We were wrong. He paused, letting that sink in. Humans do not survive because they are the strongest. They survive because they are efficient. They do not waste energy on dominance displays. They do not fight battles they can avoid. They do not confuse preparation for war with preparation for survival. When a human enters a survival situation, they do the boring, unglamorous work of staying alive, and they keep doing it. Hour after hour, day after day, until everyone's lungs has burned out. Thexral, attending via hologram from his medical bed, looked like he wanted to argue, but his infected arm, now wrapped in regenerative bandages, made a pretty solid counter-argument. The reputation shift was immediate and brutal. Before the trial, the alien cadets had dismissed humans as soft, weak, unimpressive. After the trial, there was a new understanding. Humans were not weak, they were patient. And patience, it turned out, was terrifying in its own way, because you can defend against aggression. You can counter tactics. You can outlast biological advantages. But how do you fight someone who simply refuses to quit? How do you defeat an opponent who will just keep going, one boring step at a time, long after you have collapsed from exhaustion? You do not. That is the answer. 3 months after the trial, I watched the graduation ceremony. Lieutenant Jennifer Reeves received her commission with the same unremarkable efficiency she had shown in the wastes. No dramatic speeches. No boasting. She just accepted her rank, nodded politely, and walked off the stage. And somewhere in the audience, 41 other cadets, the ones who had survived their own trials or retaken them later, watched her with newfound respect. The human who had brought a hat to a battle and won by refusing to fight. I have been an observer at the Galactic Military Academy for 16 cycles. I have seen spectacular failures and impressive victories, but I have never seen anyone win so completely by doing so little. Humans. They will bore you to death, and then outlive you out of sheer spite. Respect. The trial did not fail the strongest candidates. It exposed how easily competence collapses when effort is wasted on proving dominance instead of managing limits. Survival favored the one participant who treated energy, water, and time as non-renewable resources rather than tools for display.